Well, thank you, members. We're so glad to see you. We're really glad to see Lorena Bradford, Dr. Bradford, but I don't know if she likes me calling her that. Um, and I'll get to her in just a moment. We're so lucky to have her for this bonus presentation. But a couple of quick things before we get started. First of all, please mute yourself so that we don't hear you chewing or your dog barking or the doorbell ringing. So please mute yourself. And if you have a question, you can ask to unmute, or Lorena will ask you to do that. Thank you, artists, for those of you who have submitted work for our spring 2026 spring juried show. We've got lots of interest, lots of interest already, and somebody hasn't muted themselves, but I hope they will. What that means is it'll be difficult for our judge to sort through them and get it down to the number that will fit in the gallery, but it also means that our show will be beautiful. And the deadline is March 30th for those entries. In the gallery right now is a show that Lisa and I just helped put up, Italian American Art Circle. It's called Radici Roots, Italian Creativity in the USA. The opening, it's up right now. Their Meet the Artist event will be on April 19th from 1:30 to 3:30. And they're pretty excited about it. They're going to be serving Italian food. They're going to have some music. And they're all very expressive, and the art is absolutely beautiful. I hope you'll get a chance to get over to see it. If you can't make the opening, which is open to the public, you can certainly see it at your own leisure during the week. It's really an interesting and very different type of show. We are delighted to welcome Dr. Lorena Bradford back for our evening of looking at art together. The title of her presentation is Let's Look Together. Lorena is a longtime supporter of our Art League. Many of you will remember her presentation in the fall of 2024, where she talked about Berthe Morisot's Mother and Sister of the Artist, which was in conjunction of a National Gallery of Art special presentation titled Paris 1874. And I will never forget, her telling us about her friend Edouard Manet actually interfering with that painting and trying to take over, but he didn't, because the part that Berthe Morisot did was the better part of that painting. But anyway, that's one thing. She's also judged several of our juried shows. Most recently, she judged the winter show, and it was December of 2024. And pre-pandemic, she also judged a show. Lorena Bradford has her PhD in art history from the University of Delaware. For 17 years, she developed and oversaw accessible programs for the Department in Learning Engagement at the National Gallery of Art. She is now a professor of art history at Montgomery College. She also consults on accessibility programs for places like the Smithsonian, the Kidney Center, and Scribely. We have shared, just an aside, we have shared her comments with subsequent judges of our juried shows because they're so thoughtful, insightful, and perceptive. And these comments are an example for our other jurors. I don't know, Lorena, if you knew that or not, but you do now. Most importantly, Lorena is a wonderful person and a very good friend for Lisa and I and the Rockville Art League. So without further gushing, I'll turn it over to Lorena.
I'm so happy to be here with you all tonight. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to be here again. I always love spending time with folks from the Art League and with your art, with your observations. And so tonight we are going to look together over the next hour or so at one work of art. And we are going to, the reason that we're going to spend so long with one piece instead of trotting through a bunch, which is also exciting and fun to do, is this is a chance for us to slow down. Like actually slow down our mental processes, slow down our thoughts, slow down the conversation, even to have time to look, to see, to wonder, to ask questions of a work of art, to see if there are ideas that people agree on, or if there's different ideas that are being presented, how they all fit together. So we are going to spend the first part of this, it's sort of a presentation, but I'm actually going to be looking to you. I'm going to be asking you to share your things that you're noticing, things that you're wondering, questions that you have, in a very interactive conversation for the first half of the program. So to that end, you are invited, if you're comfortable doing so, turning on your camera. If you'd rather not, or eating dinner. I actually don't mind looking at you eat, but I do know this is being recorded. If you're comfortable turning on your camera, great. If you'd like to participate, you can do so by raising a Zoom hand in the reactions, the react area. You can raise an actual hand, and I'll sort of check through the screens to see if anyone is trying to flag down, or you can type into the chat. I'll have the chat box open, and if wherever you are right now, it's best to just share your things that you're noticing or respond in the chat box. That's also totally fine. But this is our chance to be here, be now. What is it? Is it Thursday? It is Thursday, right? We're like, spring break for one place was last week, and my kids are little. They're 6 and 7, and spring break for them is next week. So in this weird limbo of everything. So with that in mind, maybe it would be nice for you, the way it would be nice for me, to just maybe take a deep breath and just arrive. It's the end of the day. Maybe notice if your neck or your shoulders are tight. Just get comfortable where you are. And we will explore a work of art together. Then I'll share all the juicy bits that you must know, because we're grown-ups and we've been trained to need to know the stuff. So I'll share all of the background of the artist, what we know about this piece, what we can infer about it. And then we'll take a look again and see if, with all of that new information, does anything else present itself? Any questions or observations? Okay. So if you have questions along the way, again, feel free to put up a hand or a Zoom hand, or type into the chat, and we'll just have a fun conversation. All right, I'm going to start by sharing my screen. The first slide is just a gray slide. Don't worry, that's what I'm expecting. It's just a chance for me to get you all situated so I can, I like to have you all in my view and open the chat. You don't need to know all this, but that's what I'm doing. Okay. And when I advance the slide, let me do one more thing. Wow. Okay. When I advance the slide, I'm going to ask you to just take a moment and notice what your first impression is. So what feeling or word or couple words come to mind, and just lock them in your mind. Just notice them. There's nothing wrong or right about it. What's your first impression? And then we'll take a nice long look at the piece, and then we'll get into talking about it. Okay, so here it is. So once you've sort of got your first impression in mind, just let your eye go where it wants to go. And just notice what draws your attention. How does your eye move around the picture? If you could almost like map it or draw it, what might that look like? And I am paying attention to you. I have you on my screen over here and the work of art on my screen next to you. So that's I'm looking at the painting. Imagine that. Notice what kind of catches your interest, where your eye seems to want to rest. Still taking it in. You might look for something that you hadn't noticed yet. there another detail that you can find that you hadn't lingered on? I'm curious is just from those I can see, or if you wanted to do a reaction in Zoom. Does anyone know this painting?
Yeah.
I'm seeing no's. If you do, if this happens to be something that's familiar to you, um, this is a chance to look at it anew, or even if you're familiar with the style or the time period, just come at it as if you're completely fresh, as if we've never seen it before. And if it's, so if you know something about the artist or about the time period, we'll just be exploring sort of the visual qualities first, and we'll get to that other stuff later. But if this is new, also totally fine.
Is it a Dutch painting?
Yes, it is. It is a Dutch
Okay.
painting. Yeah. So, what are some of the things that are standing out to you all? Maybe your first impression or something that really caught your eye.
Well, my video is not working, so I'm Stephanie Banked at the very end here.
Okay.
Obviously, a meal has been completed. The uh, the setting is kind of messy, so it indicates that the meal has been finished. There are vessels that are partially open, and there's some that are lying down, so they've been used. There's a glass decanter in the back that has partial wine in it, so it looks as though it's been a meal that has been completed, and that's all I can see. I love the
Yeah, great.
arrangement. As a photographer, I understand still life. It fits the composition of a still life. It has elevation. It has color
Yeah.
coordination. So it's really lovely, actually, even though it's kind of messy.
Yeah, kind of messy, but lovely anyway. Yeah, Stephanie. So you're immediately going to a story. You're starting to wonder how do these things connect to tell us what happened here, right? What is the action? And you're imagining that a meal has been completed. Sort of interesting to think about if we were at this table. Just maybe just imagine in a chair or standing or sort of at the table, what it might have been like to eat something like this. But it's interesting that you're going to the narrative. You're trying to think about how this all comes together. Yeah, Dorothy says it's sumptuous. Dorothy, I'd love to hear more in the chat or in person. Like what draws that word out for you in particular? It's a great word. M Cable says, wondering about the tipped over candlestick. Ah, this here.
I think it
Yeah, well,
looks like somebody, like their meal was interrupted and they had to leave in a hurry.
okay. So meal was interrupted. They had to leave in a hurry. Yeah, David.
I think that Heda, I guess, but I think the meal turned into a bacchanal, and they just took the wine and left the food and went someplace.
Okay. What makes you say that?
Well, I don't know. There's a mess, and things are knocked. Well,
Plates are about to fall.
and I don't know. I guess my thoughts are puerile, but but the
No,
plates
totally.
the plates are just about falling off the table, but
Yeah.
they left in haste.
Yes. They left in haste or they left a mess, right?
Mhm.
This isn't a table where someone has dined genteelly and then, gently pushed themselves back and left to answer the door or, go to bed or whatever. Yeah, and David, that's why I was pushing you. There's something sort of disrupted about it or it's in disarray. Yeah.
I also think that he has this is a very busy painting,
Mhm.
and my immediate thoughts were that, and I think he does it sometimes a lot, is that he puts a lot of stuff in his paintings, and I think that I and I think he puts things in to show that he can really capture very representationally
Yeah.
all of these things.
Yep.
He's yeah, I don't know. He's showing off.
Absolutely showing off. Yep. I completely agree. Yeah.
I keep looking at the lemon with the peel there.
Hmm.
That's not something that would usually be on a dinner, on a even a banquet table. You'd have sliced lemon or or wedges of lemon, but that has actually been peeled, like with a paring knife.
Yeah.
And I wonder what that's all about. Is he telling us something? Is there some hidden message in that lemon?
Yeah. What's going on with the lemon? It's peeled in a very distinctive way. Why is it there? And even the placement, things that I don't know if you all know this as artists, but people's eye tend to go to the middle of things, right? That's where you put your important stuff oftentimes in pictures. But we also read from left to right. And so there's something, especially Estelle, for me about that color. There's so much brown and gray and even these sort of creamy whites in this painting, but that lemon really does grab our attention. So wondering what's it doing there? Does it mean something? Yeah.
Dave mentioned earlier those plates, I guess it's bread and then it maybe a plate with a turned over glass or something. They with the shadows and everything, they really look like they are about to fall off the table.
Yeah.
And so I wonder what's going on there. The drapery of the white tablecloth is just beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and it's also maybe the more civilized element of the meal. It looks like it'd be an intimate meal to me. This wasn't a large group of people for me, and I also see how these kind of got this circular. The darks are organized in a circular way, and the peel, of course, helps that rotational viewing of the darks around the white tablecloth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those plates, you really want to go and just push well, if you're anything like me, I don't want them falling and making a mess. For the love of God, the house is messy enough. You want to go make sure that they're okay, push them farther on. And then, this is why I love talking with artists, that noticing how the darks create this ring. And when it came to describing this painting for the work that I do in accessibility, it was really hard to know whether to describe it, to organize it left to right, front to back, or as if we were looking down at the table using the face of a clock. It's so sophisticated how it sort of shifts back and forth between all those planes. Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking about was if Matisse had painted this picture, how much different it would have looked with not Matisse, Cézanne. If Cézanne and then Cézanne. But, everything falling off the table would have been the norm, and it would have been the most settled part of the thing.
Yeah. And Cézanne was very influenced by work from this period, 17th century. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of the history of make add a note to we'll touch back on that. So yeah, that would be a really cool comparison. Yeah, I see in the chat Anne mentioned the fabric and the lemon as well. Really, I really want to reach out and touch that cloth that looks so soft. And then we've got Fred saying first very strong diagonal and also no meal at all. Food laid out for a painting. Yeah, interesting. Piled up tablecloth indicates no meal at table. I went from mid right up to open lid on high left. Yeah, so that diagonal that right across the painting. And yeah, maybe there's some clues here that this was a little bit staged, right? That this was something that was set up. Yeah. And then M Cable, sorry, I don't know what that first name is, said unsettled. And that comment came through when we were talking about this isn't just something that someone, wiped the corners of their mouth, genteelly set down their napkin and then went and did something else. Yeah.
One thing that bothers me a little bit, in between the pewter jug with the top open and the candlestick that's lying down, there's something that at first I thought it was grapes, but then I thought, well, maybe it's texture on a glass bottle. But it's hard for me to determine what.
This here?
Yeah, particularly right in between, right in there. So it's more glass on the left, but then it's hard for me to tell what it is on the right side of that object.
Yeah, and we'll zoom in just a minute. Yeah, it's a great observation. So some a little bit of what's going on here. June says, questions, what is the tall object mid-back, low silver object that needs polish, right side, rolled paper on plate, and what was the food being shown? All great questions. So we will pace through this and take a very close and exhaustive, perhaps overly exhaustive look at what each of these things are. But yeah, what are some of the functions of these objects? And how about this paper roll? Great observation. What do we have going on here? Ray says, the meat pie on the platter with the spoon has a lemon slice on it. Yeah. Let's get in. Let's take a closer look. I'm not gonna do the here's what it all is quite yet. Let's just look right across the middle, at least for now.
What is
Does
that
this help
thing
us,
called?
Patrick?
It helps a lot. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
What is the thing called? The tall gold-looking thing? What is it?
That is a goblet. That's like a covered cup. We'll talk more about it.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So it's like a chalice almost, right? And then it has the top on it to show this is important.
Okay.
Pewter pitcher here, dented. Anyone notice that?
Mm-mm. What I thought were grapes now I think are olives.
They are olives. Yep.
I just can't help but feel like there's some kind of debauchery going on in the adjoining room.
As did I.
Yeah, that we're edging
As
into
did
this.
I.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's just trying to show off that he can paint all those different textures and surfaces, and yeah, it's a show off. Yes.
Show off. Yeah. This is a big time what I call look what I can do painting.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 And does
But
it
he
so
does,
well.
but it's done well.
It is done well.
He does
Yeah.
show. Yeah.
June says, looks very staged to paint and not really a meal. Yeah, something artificial happening here, something outside the ordinary, debauchery. I like that word. Unsettled.
Yeah, it
Swaroop.
doesn't
Looks like
really fit a narrative at all, I don't
Yeah,
think.
it's hard to come up with a narrative that explains everything that we're seeing here. Yeah. And someone says, looks like the white satin tablecloth is pulled off the table hastily, dropping the glass and the candle holder, a scene from a play. No one's ever shared that idea before.
Hmm.
Like the banquet with Hamlet's father's ghost or something, right?
Hmm.
It's not, but that would be really cool.
The glass on the plate on the right is broken, correct?
It is. Yeah.
You know, so that
I'm
was
actually-
picked up and put back there, I guess.
Hold on, give me 1 second. I'm going to let me do. Come on. Oh, sorry, my computer's being weird. There we go. Okay. I'm
see
going to
broken
scoot
glass.
us over to here, and I'm going to take us to this. All right, because now we can really get into it. I mean, come on, you guys, look at this Zoom.
Mm.
We've mentioned the lemon. Let's take a closer look at the lemon. Try not to make you seasick here. Zoom out a little bit.
The peeled lemon or oranges is a regular for him, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Looks
And
like
and in this time period.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
There's the wrap.
Also, it's not a meal. It's not a meal of a peasant family. It seems to be a meal of an upper class family. Also, given the kind of material and some of the food items. Also, would you agree?
I would agree. Yep, certainly with the material. I was just going to ask what made you say that. But Stephanie, what about the food materials? Like, what makes you say that that's an upper class?
To be pewter, fine glassware,
Yeah.
nice implements, fine trays, probably silver. So those items, you might find wooden vessels and more primitive utensils if it were a peasant family.
Yeah.
And it just seems to be more of a setting that is and the food also looks like be more, is less, more perhaps gourmet for that family and for that era. You know,
Yeah.
for the peasant family eating ale, drinking ale, and plain bread, white bread, perhaps, or brown bread in that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I work in accessibility, so I have an app that shows me alt text behind images. That's why that description keeps coming up. And here's that broken glass. I mean, come on. I don't know if you guys know this either, but glass can be hard to paint. But to have this broken glass and it comes out at us so perfectly. And this painting is about 4 by 4 feet tall. It's 42 inches tall by 43 inches wide, or the other way around. So it's almost square. What I think we should do now is I'm going to zoom out for a little bit, and I would like to move from left to right. And hold on, it says first, wide hem with folds I find very pleasurable. Evidence of showing off, absolutely. Inclusion of lemon peeled seems to me artificial. Reflection of the glass face on dark urn is splendid visually. Yes, it is. I totally agree. We'll take a closer look at that. So, so what I think we should do is, if you will indulge me, I'm gonna pace through and yeah, what we're wondering in the chat, what's in that paper, that rolled up paper. But I'm going to pace through from left and right and explain what we're seeing. You may know a lot of it, but just hang with me for it, okay? So we're going to start over here. Yes, there's the description. So we have a snuffed out candle. So we have this candlestick. This is called a Dutch candlestick. That's just the style with the sort of the flaring base and then the stacked little trays, but we can see that the candle has been snuffed out. It has dripped down. This is a snuff, like a candle snuffer. And maybe you're familiar with this, maybe you're not. They're like a pair of scissors, but instead of 2 blades, it has like a flat side and then like a box side. And you would trim the wick because candlesticks didn't burn away in this time period. Sort of disappearing candlesticks didn't come around until about 200 years after this was painted. So you had to trim the wick. So every 15 minutes or so, you would have to blow out the candle, trim the wick down, because if you didn't, what would happen is that the wick would get so long, it would be burning, it would fall against the side of your candle, and it would run through the candle. Now, there are 2 kinds of candles that were popular at this time. There was tallow, which was made from animal fat and smelled very bad and smoked a lot, but was very inexpensive. And there's beeswax, and these beeswax candles burned more cleanly, more brightly, but they were more expensive. So you had to take better care of them. You didn't want to be running through your beeswax candles. And this is a beeswax candle. This is not a tallow candle. So the snuffers are here, ready to grab that wick before it gets too short and wastes the wax. We have oyster shells imported. We have a lemon imported. Lemons are cheap now. I have like 6 in my fridge, but they were not cheap in the Netherlands at the time. They weirdly do not grow naturally up there. And this is Dutch. We have a pewter plate with olives, which were imported. This is this is the most Dutch detail of this whole thing. So this is a roamer. This is a glass. So it's on its side. So if you can imagine writing it, and the bowl is the glass that you drink from. The reason that the stem looks like this, and I'm actually going to step out a little bit from this to help make this point. This was painted in 1635. In 1635, this brand new fad was coming into fashion. And that fad, that new style, was for people to have individual forks, knives, and spoons. At this point, you had a knife for the table and a spoon for the table. And we can actually see that here. Here's the knife, and here's the spoon. And the upper classes, if you go to like the Rijksmuseum or places that have sort of the material culture of the time, you'll find these little sets. They're those reading glasses that are really, really thin, and they slide into a tiny little case. They're like that size. And it would have your own little knife, fork, and spoon. And it was very fashionable to bring your utensils with you when you ate, because if you weren't doing that, you were using the spoon to serve, you were using the knife on the table, and then you were eating with your hands. So you would often have and they could do this delicately and elegantly, but well, more elegantly than I could. But oftentimes your hands would get greasy while you were eating. So the Dutch, being absolutely brilliant at everything, were like, well, the glasses, which were expensive, are slipping out of our greasy, nasty hands. So they put these little prints on, this is little textured nubbins on this thick stem, so that when your hand was all greasy and gross from eating, you could hold on to that glass and it wouldn't just slide right through and break into a billion pieces. I mean, the best under-engineered solution to a problem ever. So if you go to the Netherlands, you can buy glasses that look like this. So that's what that is. This, and it has I love this reflection of the window behind us. And this is I think it was Fred who was mentioning the reflections in this are absolutely stunning. So this is a pewter, a jug. This would have probably held water or some kind of, probably maybe beer or something like that. So usually these held water that was used to water down wine. So they didn't drink straight water because it was very unhealthy. So that's probably what was in here. This is a chalice. This would have had wine in it. So we've got water and wine. And let's just linger and take a look at this finial on it. So
Ooh,
here we have, what's that?
Neptune.
The god of
See,
The sea.
the sea. Yep. And here he is on a seahorse and has a horsey front end and a fishy back end. We'll come back to that. So that's what this is. Very, very expensive, very, very fine, all hand chased, all hand done. I mean, it was, you poured it into a mold, but then had to be lots of work. Now, this is not a candlestick. But it is often thought to be. This is actually a little plate. So instead of having you need to turn it over in your mind. So the little part of it is the foot. And then it had this shallow dish. This is called a tassa. And this would have had little sweetmeats. So little baked things that were covered in basically confectioner sugar, or nuts covered in confectioner sugar, or dried fruits, things that were kind of special. So this is also very expensive and very sort of lots of handiwork going on here. So you can see why it looks like a candlestick, but it's actually a dish for food. Very expensive. We have a little loaf of bread and our plates that are coming off the table. Here we have a little cruet. This is a Venetian glass, very distinctive style, Venetian glass. Anyone recognize what this is? Surely somebody.
Stein.
Not a stein.
No.
This is
Iceborne.
not ice. I know we want it to be ice. It's not caviar.
A salt
No.
cellar or something?
It's salt. It is
Oh.
salt. And you guys, this is what you see is what you get. This is not like a tube that's filled with salt. We're going to come back to the salt. The salt was so prized that you would have these artists like Bernini. I mean, the biggest artist of the day. He's Italian and a sculptor and amazing, and Cellini and stuff. But making what were called salt cellars, CELLARS, like basement cellars. And it would just be basically like a fancy plinth or a pedestal for your salt. And this is the salt that you would have for your whole table. And this is a lot of salt. Patrick, are you giving me the thumbs down for a reason?
It wasn't me. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Oh, maybe, sometimes it'll like see gestures and it'll think that you're doing. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't doing something wrong or muted or
If
something.
anything, I'd give you a thumbs up.
Okay. So we have a very expensive, beautiful metal piece here with our little salt piled on it. And this is the mince pie. Has anyone ever had mince pie?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Before I die, did you like it?
Yes.
Yes.
My grandmother made something called Banbury tarts, and if I could go back in time, I would go back and have her Banbury tarts. And it was like a raisiny, meaty kind of. It didn't have meat in it, but it was like kind of a similar idea. Mince pie was extremely expensive to make and was only made on very special occasions because it used up to 27 spices that came from literally around the world. And the issue of spices is something that we'll talk more about when we get into the history behind this. But so this is something that you would have made on very special occasions. So that's what we have here. So we've got the crust of the mince pie. You see all the little meaty berry bits here, and then the spoon leaning against it. And then it would have been topped with slices of lemon.
Would it have contained meat?
It depends. I think some mince pie does and some doesn't.
Yes, yes.
I don't know. Here we have a little glass of beer for our beer drinkers. We have some more oyster shells imported. We have another roamer, another cup that's been broken. And let's talk about this guy. So this is a little almanac page. So this is, we can tell that it's an almanac because it's printed in this distinctive red and black text, which is how they were printed at the time. And this is how you bought pepper. That's what's in this little roll. This is how you bought pepper, and this would have cost a small fortune. So again, pepper is something that we take for granted. But it was extremely, extremely important at the time. I'm actually, before I get into any of that, let's take a step back, and I want to mention one more thing that hasn't come up yet, and that is the cloth, because I feel like this is the detail that we're most likely to overlook. We, as modern day viewers, not you and me as individuals. This is linen. Linen was the most expensive material in a house, period, in this time period, because to get flax, and flax is naturally, if you make it into fabric, is itchy and uncomfortable and not, I don't know why they went through so much trouble, but they did. You would have to work the linen for days and go through these awful processes to bleach the linen and make it white and make it soft. And there was a town in the Netherlands. So this was painted in Amsterdam. We'll talk more about why that's important in a minute. But this was the Haarlem, which was pretty close by. You can get there like 45 minutes on a train now. And Haarlem was known for bleaching linen. And what they would, so disgusting. They would soak it in urine and all this other absolutely nasty stuff, and it smelled bad. And then they would put them out in the sun in these bleaching fields, and the stench would just be horrible for miles or kilometers or whatever they use. But it was such a luxury item, and to have so much of it here, just bunched up carelessly like this, is sort of an interesting detail. So with some of that in mind, let's just take another look at this painting before I go into some of the interesting history behind it. But let's just take another look, maybe take another deep breath, take it in.
What is the silver oblong thing on the far right at the edge of the table?
This?
Yeah.
These are oyster shells. Empty.
No, just below that it looks like some kind of silver thing.
This?
Oh, that's a shell?
Yep. So these are empty oyster shells, which were thought at the time to be aphrodisiacs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. I'm Stephanie Banks again at the end with no video. Can we assume that many of these items were made by local artisans, but some of the food was imported from somewhere else, which would indicate the Dutch had commerce and merchants, etc., that were providing this table with all these wonderful food groups?
Yep. I say a lot of the material would have been made locally, but we do have that Venetian glass, which is and it's very distinctive, with the oil or vinegar in it, for the oysters. I like oysters, but so yes. Yeah. Great connection to make. Any other observations or things you're wondering? Were mussels eaten then? I have no idea. It's a good question, Fred, sorry. Anything else that you're noticing now that we've gone through some of that? How would you interpret this? Like if we were to think, okay, so that's all very interesting. What does it mean? What comes to mind? If anything, maybe nothing. And what comes to mind? How might we start to interpret this painting?
Was it for a wedding night, perhaps, or the idea of that?
Okay.
Or romantic, I don't know. Yeah, and then they took the time to snuff the candle out, that's for sure. Or, no, whatever.
Yeah.
Would some of the contemporary painters have been doing scenes where everything was perfect? there was no broken glass. Things were all arranged perfectly.
That kind of came later.
It
And
was
we'll talk more
later.
about that. That came with the French. So we'll talk about the history in a second, but the French came in and took over the Netherlands in 1675. And that's when everything started looking very fussy and perfect. The
Okay.
reason I studied this time period for my dissertation is that it is messy and sometimes kind of weird, often very funny. But even in like the floral still lifes that are in the same room as this painting, you have flowers and fruit that are dying and bugs and
Okay.
like, so it's usually not perfect and for good reasons.
Okay.
Could this be a commentary on sort of the excess of wealth versus, it's all this rich and rare stuff, yet it's all a mess. Maybe that's a social commentary.
Yeah. Maybe a social commentary saying,
You can have all the money you want, but you're still a mess. I don't know.
but you're
Something
still
like
in
that.
it.
Oh,
This painting is 4 by 4 feet, which makes us think it was a commission. Work was being done for an open market, which we'll talk about for the first time that for an open art, there was an open market for the first time. But because this is so big, we think it was a commission, but we don't know what it was, who it was commissioned for. So Lisa, we don't know if it was for, to celebrate a marriage or something like that. I mean, that would kind of make sense, but like there's a lot of questions. So let's dive into the history of this fascinating painting. You guys, if I could only teach one work of art for the rest of my life, this would be the one I would pick. And there's a lot that I love, but man, this one hits all the spots. So this is by an artist. Let's pop back to our PowerPoint just so you can see the name of it. This is by Willem Claesz Heda, and kind of a cool thing. Oh, hold on, I gotta switch this.
By the way,
if you see this,
you said what you just said about it being your favorite one. You said that about Bert Morisot and the sister of the artist too.
yeah, but for real, this would be the
You
one.
were just kidding that time, right?
Well, I meant it at the time, but now I'm looking at this one. So this little SV is kind of something that you'll see a lot with Dutch names. It just means son of. So this is Willem, son of Claes, which, just amaze your friends. This means this was an abbreviation for Claeszoon, Zoon was son. So that's what that is. Willem Claesz Heda, Banquet Piece with Mince Pie, 1635. And we have a signature.
mm,
Oh my.
Neat, huh?
yeah.
That's a fun place to put it. So that's why we know the date. Usually these things are like circa whatever. Okay, so we don't know a lot about Heda. We know that one of his sons was a painter as well, Gerrit, and we have a painting, if you want to look it up, it's the still life with Ham. But we really don't have that much information about Willem or Claes actually. We know that this Heda, Papa Heda, was born in 1594. He died in 1680. He was born in Haarlem, that place that had all of the linen dyeing, and he worked there his entire career. I said this was painted in Amsterdam. I misspoke. More on Amsterdam in a sec. We know that in Haarlem, he became part of the Civic Guard. This is an interesting response to the military happenings at the time. These the towns in the Netherlands would come up with these civic guards with the idea that, if their town were under attack by whoever, that they would all take up their arms and go protect the town. Really what happened was it was a chance to put on funny outfits and banquet and eat a lot of food and have celebrations and carry around flags and stuff like that. But he was part of the Civic Guard, so, there's something there. And he specialized in still life painting. Now let's talk a little bit about the history of Europe at this time. Just hang with me, I promise it's interesting. So the Netherlands, okay, at this time, the area we're talking about encompasses sort of modern day Holland, which is part of the Netherlands. So modern day Netherlands, including Holland, and Belgium, and a little bit of Luxembourg. At the time in 1635, around this time, they were just the Netherlands. They were the Northern Netherlands and the Southern Netherlands. The most important city in the Netherlands was Antwerp. which was in Flanders, which is modern day Belgium, right? So that's the connection. And so the reason that Antwerp was so important in the 1500s, especially, is it was the center of the spice trade. So that was hugely important. It was the center of the spice trade. It was the port where a lot of the goods from the New World, the so-called New World, the Northern Africa and the Far East were coming in through Antwerp. So Antwerp was the bee's knees. Amsterdam was a backwater. Amsterdam was nothing of a town. So Antwerp is absolutely bustling. Think, Peter Paul Rubens he dies in 1641, so he's dominating Antwerp at this time, and Anthony van Dyck and stuff like that. But what happens is that because Antwerp has all of this trade and all of these goods coming in, other countries, other empires want them. Europe, as we know it, did not really exist. I mean, Germany was a mess. Italy was a mess. Just all these little city states and all kind of fighting with each other all the time. But one dynasty really had their act together, and that was the Spanish. So the Spanish saw Antwerp and thought, ooh, we want some of that. So in the late 1500s, they started a really intense campaign trying to conquer the Netherlands. So they fought and fought and fought and fought. And in 1594, they closed the port of Antwerp. This would be like turning off New York City today, or Paris or something. They closed the port of Antwerp, and they said, now, to sort of another lens to put on this is the religious angle. So the Protestant Reformation had happened. Martin Luther, among many others, but Martin Luther famously nailed his theses to the church door of the Wittenberg Castle, or Wittenberg Church, in Halloween 1517, October 31st. And what set him apart was not that his ideas were revolutionary, but that he knew how to use the printing press. And he got his ideas everywhere in the matter of weeks instead of months that it used to take to communicate ideas. So the Protestant Reformation had swept through Europe. Spain was devoutly and deeply Catholic. The Netherlands were Protestant. They were very, very, very Protestant. In fact, they were so Protestant, they were a sect of Protestantism called Calvinism. So if you think of all those somber looking people wearing black with big white collars, those are the Calvinists. So they were fiercely proud of their religion, of their culture. The Dutch were very proud. The Dutch and the Netherlandish people were very proud because they lived in what's called the Low Countries. We still call them the Low Countries because basically what happens is that the Atlantic Ocean goes like this, and then it hits, the Netherlands, and it goes like this. It's like a basin, and it's just wet, and it's not a super conveniently arable land, but because it was underwater for so long, the soil is really good. So in the 15th and 16th centuries, especially, the Netherlandish people, what we think of now as Dutch, reclaimed the land using things like water or windmills to pump water into canals, which is why we have so many canals in the Netherlands, because they're basically trying to control the flow of water so that they can use the land for anything at all. So they were deeply proud of their Protestantism. They were deeply proud of who they were as a people. So the Spanish came in, closed the port of Antwerp in 1594, which basically took over the southern Netherlands. So for the first time, you have a distinction, sort of in a national identity, a difference between the southern Netherlands and the northern Netherlands. The southern Netherlands are taken over by the Spanish. The Spanish basically say, turn Catholic or get out. So in 2 years, that's how long they had. So almost all of them got out. I mean, Antwerp I didn't die because, Rubens is still there, but a lot of the artisans, craftsmen, and merchants went to this backwater. Nobody really knows why, of Amsterdam. It was nothing. I mean, Rotterdam was a more important town. Haarlem, Delft, all these places had a better infrastructure than Amsterdam, but for some reason, that's where they went. And so Amsterdam became sort of the center of what's going on in the Netherlands, but these other, Rotterdam and Haarlem and these other, Utrecht, are also really important. So the southern Netherlands fall to the Spanish, and the Northern Netherlands keep fighting. In 1648, no, in 1632, the Northern Netherlands, so the Dutch, now what's going to be the Dutch Republic, in 1632 says to the Spanish, enough. We need to call a truce, at least just to get our act together. So the Spanish and the Dutch came to what was called the 12 Years Truce. Started in 1632, it ended in 1648. Yes, that math does not math. But it was basically this period of sort of a ceasefire so that they could figure out what the future was going to be. In 1648, they signed something called the Treaty of Munster, which gave the Dutch people their land back. And the Spanish said, okay, fine, we're out. And that's when it became the Dutch Republic. So this painting is right in the middle of that. This is painted during the 12 Years Truce. This is painted after, while these big political upheavals are going on, this financial and economic instability insofar as, war and battle and struggle can bring all of that. But because we are a Protestant people, time is it? Because we are Protestant people, one of the things that Martin Luther said, the great reformer, said is, you need to be careful about using images in worship. What people heard was, you need to destroy all of the images in worship. So iconoclasts swept through Europe, destroying works of art. What Luther was saying was just like, be sure that if you're worshiping at a picture of the crucifixion, that you're actually thinking about the actual crucifixion and you're not worshiping this piece of wood with this stuff painted on it, right? That's idolatry. But because we have extreme Protestants, they didn't decorate their churches in the Netherlands, north or south, until the Spanish came in, and then that changed in the south. But they weren't painting altarpieces. The church was not a patron of the arts for the first time in history for 400 years. The church had absolutely dominated the art scene. So in the Netherlands, in the Dutch Republic, what would be the Dutch Republic, you have a class of people. We have a middle class for the first time ever. Had not existed before. You've got a middle class. They've got more money than they know what to do with. And they're proud of their land. They're proud of their Protestantism, and they want to show off how wealthy they are. So they become very interested in art. Because art isn't being necessarily made on commission, I said this was probably a commission, but a lot of art was made for the market. So unless you're Rembrandt, and then you can paint whatever you want, but everyone else had to specialize. So you've got an open art market for the first time in the history of forever. And what that meant is that artists needed to differentiate themselves. This is all very familiar to us today. They had to have their brand, right? And it meant that in the Netherlands, a couple of things were happening. First of all, they weren't just painting crucifixions and, descent from the cross and annunciations and stuff like that, but they had to paint something. So these new genres really started flourishing, and those included portraiture. Portraiture had happened before this, but still life painting was brand new. You can look back and find like a couple paintings that you might be able to call still life painting in like ancient Rome. It's like a fresco of a basket of fruit or something like that. But this is the first time that you have still life painting. This is the first time that you've got landscape as a topic that isn't just the place where things are happening for religious people. So landscape, portraiture, still life painting, a little bit of religious painting. You've got, Cuyp doing his cows. You've got so-and-so Backhausen doing his stormy seas. These artists needed to specialize in a subject and in a style, and in a sub-subject, and in a sub-style to be recognized. So you could look at a painting like this and say, that's a Heda. I know that because it's done in this, what art historians, I hate this, call this monochromatic style. It drives me nuts. I mean, look, that is filled with beautiful color. And for something that is all gray and brown, it is absolutely stunning, even though we don't want it to be, because I hope at least one of you here, when I first put this up, was like, ugh. I think that's part of its appeal in a way is, and it's just still it's not a big, but I mean, you're artists, so you see the beauty of it. But you didn't just specialize in still life, you specialized in floral still life or game still life, which was dead animals, or breakfast still life or banquet still life, or, you know, all these different things. And so artists began to be known for a specific style and specific subjects. So you have someone like Heda, we don't have a whole lot of paintings by him, but what we do have are a mess of paintings that all have, or many have, this silver, this tassa, or this, you know, this candlestick, or, you know, these props show up again and again. And this gets at what we were talking about in the kind of like stagey sort of like, it's not really a meal. It's hard to imagine where someone would even be sitting to eat this, because you don't sit down and eat a mince pie by yourself. I mean, you could, but you wouldn't. You know, that was something that you shared with your community on these special occasions. So where are the rest of the plates? Where are the rest of the people? Where are the napkins? Where's the other cups? You know, all these things. So Heda becomes really well known for this kind of still life. And it has all these allusions to the wealth of the nation. There's a lot of nationalistic pride. It's kind of an anachronistic to say that now. Love that word. I always feel so fancy when I use it. It's anachronistic, but it is, you know, like they didn't have a sense of national identity the way that we might define it today. But if they, you know, they were proud of who they were as a people. And we see tons of imports, the lemons, the olives, I mean, I just kept saying the word imported, the salt, the pepper, you know, like all of this stuff is coming into the Netherlands at this time. And this is a celebration of and someone got this right at the beginning of the session, sort of a celebration of their mercantile, of their trading sort of economy. And another little hint that trade on the water is really important. Remember this guy? We have our friend Neptune.
Oh, yes,
Top.
yes.
Yep, god of the sea. So this is all a way of saying that this can be seen as a celebration of what it was to be Dutch at this time. There's a lot of ways to look at works of art, and for a long time, curators, such an interesting, art historians can be the worst. And there was this really fabulous debate between Medema and Svetlana Alpers in like the late 80s, where they were having all these fights about what the symbolism of the peasants meant. I don't know why it got so fraught, but there's another side of this is that printed culture was really popular in the Netherlands. They were extremely literate because of the printing press. They were very popular there. They weren't censored the way that they were other places in Europe. And even if they did get shut down for printing something that somebody didn't like, they would literally just move the press next door and open back up. It wasn't, you know, the places were doing that all the time. So people read a lot of things. Emblem books were very popular. So an emblem is sort of like a picture, it's a symbol. It may be like a skull and a smoking candle. And then it would have a title like Memento Mori, remember death. And then it would have like a little couplet or a little rhyme at the bottom. And so there were all these, you know, mince pie could be shown in an emblem book to represent, you know, gluttony or something like that. It's hard to know how directly impactful those emblem books and that kind of like common symbolism was in works like this. The other thing that scholars really point to is the one thing on this table that has not been touched or upset. Sarah, I see you smiling.
The bread.
The bread.
Yeah.
Where's the bread? If you drew an X on this canvas,
Right
where would it be?
It is dead center.
It is dead center. It is right here. It is untouched. You've got bread here. Who's paying attention? What's here?
Reflection.
Well, reflection, yes. What's in this vessel?
The wine.
The wine. Anyone know of any important symbolism of bread and wine?
Oh, yeah.
Right at the center of this painting. So in a society where religion is extremely important to these people, could this be a religious allusion to the Eucharist. And one of the, I don't know a ton about this, so I'm sorry if this is slightly inaccurate. Don't jump on me. One of the things that set Protestantism apart from Catholicism is that in Catholicism, the belief was that the blood and that the bread and wine turned literally into the blood and body of Christ. Literally, it became the blood and body of. And in Protestantism, it became a symbol of something close to that. Right. My point is that the blood and no, the wine and bread were a really important theological debate at the time. So is this a way to juxtapose, hey, remember you're going to die, right? Remember all of this stuff is transitory, that the candle's going to be snuffed out. The lemon's gonna rot. The mince pies wouldn't be thrown away because you would never throw it away because it was so valuable. Does it have like a moralizing kind of quality to it, or does it not? I think that for a long time, that was a path that we went really far down. But a couple of you mentioned right at the beginning that there's so much about this that is stunningly beautiful. I think if you think, oh, this is just a moralizing, like, don't forget you're going to die and that this is all going to be well, you've got to live your life the right way. Because if we go back and look at this lemon, this absolutely stunning lemon, this is a massive look what I can do moment. So you've got this nubbly outside. You've got this sort of the pithy white, you've got this glistening, and in person, like you can almost like feel that lemon juice coming off of it. And then you've got a spiral in space, which you got not easy to paint or show or draw, right? So and also like if you could peel a lemon like this, I would be doing this every day. It'd be like, look what I can do. So I think that there's something for me personally, and you can take from it what you will. Maybe there's a little bit of like, hey, you guys, Christianity, afterlife, if that's important to you, maybe remember that. Also very decadent, but also very beautiful. I think that if you go too far down the moralizing route, you overlook the celebration that this is. Oh, and I said I would talk a little bit more about salt. Are you guys, if you need to go, but I'll just mention the salt. The salt is something that for a long time we said was a status symbol. It cost a lot of money. I said this would have cost a small fortune, having this much here. We all know that, Roman salaries were based, they're called salaries because of salt. So it was a luxury, symbolized wealth, and really the reach of the Dutch Empire that could bring all of these things into one place. But it was also really important to the Dutch. As you may know, they have a big herring industry, and salt was really important for preserving meat and dairy and and especially herring at the time. So if you could have salted herring, which is actually very nutritious, disgusting, but nutritious, and you could put a bunch of that on a ship, you can get a lot further without all of your sailors dying of scurvy, and get lemons and things like that. So it was an important part of why they were such an successful sort of empire of shipping, sometimes called the herring empire. But salt was oftentimes gotten from slavery. Enslaved people harvesting salt under absolutely horrible, hot, humid, disgusting conditions in the Caribbean, especially. So it has this as sort of a reminder that it's an interpretation that we're bringing to this painting that we wouldn't have 20 years ago. This used to be called the golden age of Dutch painting. That's not a term that you'll hear so much anymore because we're realizing how much the slave industry enabled so much of what we see here. So it's sort of, I like that fact, not because I like slavery, but because it's because I don't. But it's just a reminder that we're still, this is 400 years ago, but we're still peeling back layers and understanding how these things connect, both within this picture and to the wider picture of what's going on in the Netherlands, in European political scene, in Heda's studio, trying to carve out a living as an artist, and why people might have been really excited to have something like this. Are there any questions, or is there anything people want to share now that I've unloaded my brain
I'll
onto
just send
you?
that question, but the wine, the brown, lighter brown wine container that turns out to be Neptune. I'm looking on an iPad and I can't see it that great, but it almost reminded me of those religious, like something, a bishop has on his mitre or whatever. It's something, different symbols, because I can't see it that well. So it makes me laugh a little bit that it's actually Neptune, which is not Christian. It's going back to Greek and Roman myths. So that's kind of amusing to me. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. And this is another one of those instances where we think about emblems, and often an emblem, a symbol of temperance, was watering your wine, right? So is the water right next to the wine a reminder to be, again, it's hard to know. Yeah.
Is there any particular reason that those two plates are falling off the table?
I just think that is another look what I can do. It comes into our space. Something we didn't talk about was the arrangement of the table. It's so, is it in the middle of a room? Is it pushed up against a wall? We kind of have the sense of it's pushed up against a wall, but we can't really tell. The edge of the table comes to the edge of the painting, but then scoots back away from it. And I think that something that Dutch artists were playing with a lot, and this would come up again in 19th century America with people like Pito and William Harnett, of this illusionistic, of breaking that plane between us and them. That's very postmodern idea. So again, a little anachronistic to apply here, but thinking about, like, we want to sort of thinking about how we're interacting with this, and the story, the ancient Roman, or the ancient story of Zeuxis and Parrhasius, about painting illusionistic scenes, and one of them painted a bunch of grapes and it was so real that the birds came to eat it, and then the other one painted a picture, and when the other artist went to move the curtain aside, found that the curtain was the painting, so that painter had won because he fooled a person. That's better than fooling a bird. So these were, like, that sounds so kind of niche, but like these were actually conversations that artists were having at the time. So I think that's coming into our space, making us kind of implicit in the painting as well. And if you look at Manet paintings, often, especially his still lifes, but he will often also find ways and stuff that's not still life. If something's on a table, he'll have a knife coming out at you. And Manet uses that knife to say, I know how to do all this stuff, and I'm choosing not to in the rest of the picture. So it's sort of a motif that comes back up in art.
He breaks edges all over the place, except for, in my opinion, is one. He likes to take objects and have them overlap in ways, cloth onto the plate, the lemon peel down, different things are kind of overlapping, glass and materials. The one edge that he doesn't is that far right edge of the brown table, and it's kind of austere, and maybe he meant it to be austere.
Yeah.
But as a painter who's set up still life and painted, it's so hard to make those decisions, and obviously this is beautifully done.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, David, and then June, I'll come down to you. Go ahead, David.
We have a date for this painting, and this is a large painting. I mean, comparable to other paintings of the time, and especially being a still life. I guess my point is, and I don't know if he used glazes or not. I'm assuming he did. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so how long did it take him? This had to be like a lifetime's worth of work.
This is a lifetime's worth of education for sure. We have he also wasn't working alone. Again, this is, not news that, like, you didn't have the solitary artist. Thank you, Michelangelo, for making us think that's true. But he had, he would have had a workshop where, he wouldn't necessarily have had a workshop, but he probably did. We know that he trained people, so he probably had assistants, but I don't have an answer for this was painted in 3 months or 3 years or anything like that. But when, this was, pardon me, it's bread and butter. This is what he did. So, he was able to do it fast enough to make a living from it and teach others to do it as well. Yeah, it would be really nice to know. June, I saw where did June go? Did she have to go? Did she have to leave? Oh, darn. Okay. Any other things that folks want to
Since you
share?
said bread and butter, I just have to say there's no dairy. There's no
That is
dairy
true.
on this table. I mean,
There's June.
no cheese, butter.
I actually showed this to a group once, and they recommended the theme should be bring your own cheese. So the next time I talked to them, I brought 2 still lifes that needed cheese, and we decided what kind of cheese would go well with the food. June, are you with us?
You hear me?
Yes, I
Okay.
can.
So I still wanted to comment on the cloth because that is where my eye went when I first looked at the image.
Yeah.
And I thought it looked like silk. It was so shiny. So I was very surprised when you said it was linen,
Mhm.
which is not shiny. So I'm wondering, especially the area to the left
Mhm.
is very shiny. And I don't know, it seemed very much like a period thing.
Yep.
And then it was very confusing because then immediately I looked at the bread, which looked like what's in my freezer, the buns and
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's like, so now, what is the time frame here? Why is it so shiny if
Yeah,
it's linen?
linen is when it's been washed repeat when it's been used a lot, it will start to get this kind of, in creating it, it gets soaked and dried and manipulated. That's how you get it soft again and again and again. And it could have this kind of sheen to it.
It's a
I mean,
gorgeous
it's
part of
so
the painting.
gorgeous.
Yeah, I agree.
It's
Bradford,
an incredible job of the fold, the painting of it.
I
Yeah, I
think it
agree.
looks like 2 different kinds of fabric, almost like a
Mm.
satin and an organza,
Yeah,
almost like in a wedding dress where
Mm.
what's in the center is more sheer than what's on the edge.
Yes, yeah, like it's a hem. The edge
Yeah,
is.
very deep hem.
Oh,
uh
that's a crease. That's what was always my understanding. This is where it's been pressed, where it's been ironed.
No, I don't think that that's
It's a
what it is
hem.
because you have over on the far left, you see a crease. Come out a
Hmm.
little bit. See that's a crease.
Actually, I think I see the stitches.
okay, speaking of creases, I can't remember. I'm almost positive that somewhere in my classwork, with still life of this sort, there was a press, there was a a crease in the cloth that made a reference to the cross.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's considered here or not, whether it's almost like, Christ carrying the cross up to
Yeah.
the hill. And I don't know whether this crease here is any kind of a reference to the cross or not.
Yeah, I don't think so. That hasn't come up in the discussion of this painting, but I do know what you're talking about, these sort of
Mhm.
hidden, and that speaks to, how far do we look into the symbolism for a deeply symbolic kind of culture who's steeped in these symbols from all this from their literary interest and, just being very well educated for the time. Um, It's always been my understanding that this is a crease. M. Cable saying ironing linen can make it shiny. And we do see this sort of crease, these pleats. Actually, you know what this makes me think of? Hold on one second. Just stay with me for a second because uh oh.
Yeah.
Painting so much. This is what I'm thinking it's resembling. This is 200 years before, but oh my God, isn't she gorgeous, you guys? Those lips, and then the gold, and then her little fingers all resting along the frame. Oh, that's my favorite painting. Okay, sorry. No, focus.
This will be your next scene.
I was gonna
Let's
say,
Work
I
Together
last
will be
time.
that next one.
We did a photograph the first time we were together. We did more so last time. We went farther back in time. So next time we'll either do like a high Renaissance piece or something super modern and contemporary, just to change it up a little bit.
Be your next favorite painting.
My whatever is in front of me favorite, but this one's
Yeah.
seriously. Oh,
Okay. You've been so generous with your time, and thank you. Does anybody have any final comments before we say thank you again to Lorena?
I think it was an excellent presentation, and I love the way that you chose one painting and allowed us to exploit all the possible interpretations of it and gave us all the historical background. It was a very thorough lecture. I hope you come back and do another painting like this
I
so we can actually see other painting and do it again. It was excellent. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I want to take a
Thank you.
class.
With you.
We'll take a
Yes.
class with you.
You need to do it. You need to do the adult education thing so that
Yeah, I'll look into that.
all of us
Yeah.
can join in.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I'll definitely check it.
If Montgomery College won't do it, just do it on your own, and we'll all
Oh,
sign.
there you go. Price is very reasonable. Special rates for friends.
Well, seniors
Well,
are dirt
Well,
cheap.
thank you all. Thank you for being here, for sharing in this amazing conversation. I love discovering these old friends alongside, new eyes and perspectives, and I always get a lot out of it. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me go over for
It was fabulous. I think
it was
if I
really
go like
fabulous.
this, do you get thumbs?
Yeah.
I
I'm
don't know.
constantly,
Anyway, thumbs up.
yeah, see, it's asking me if I want to raise my hand.
Okay.
Yep,
Oh.
there we go. But they couldn't make it happen if I. Anyway, okay.
Thank you so much.
Patrick, yes, wrap us up.
Thank you. It was
Thanks.
wonderful.
Okay.
I know.
Thank you
I know.
very, very much.
Of course. Bye.
And everybody, see you all later.
Thank you,
And
Patrick and Lisa.
we will definitely get
Thank you all. Thank
Dr.
you.
Lorena back again. Bye, everyone.
Another
Bye.
time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Lorena.